Namaskar and welcome to In Focus. In popular perception, the credibility of the United Front took a severe knock during the crisis over the UP government and President's rule. So how do members of the government now see the situation? Here to discuss these issues is the Minister for Information and Broadcasting and the United Front spokesman, Jaipal Reddy. Mr. Reddy, I first want to talk to you about what's been called by the press the fiasco over President's rule. It's now 2 weeks since it's happened. Can you accept that this was, in retrospect, the worst moment of this short-lived government?
In a way, I must thank the BJP. We did suffer some embarrassing moments, but BJP came to our rescue. We somehow managed to spare ourselves a constitutional blunder, though on account of the correct intervention of the President of India. But BJP served us and saved us by covering itself with everlasting shame by the manner it tried to muster majority, by the manner it expanded its cabinet.
You're a wonderful politician, Mr. Reddy. You're deflecting my point. Let me come back to it. Let me ask a simple question. How did the government end up in the embarrassing position of having to withdraw within 24 hours something it had recommended just 1 day earlier?
The situation in UP was very complex. The fact remains, and fact was, that the BJP acquired majority by offering open ministerial inducements and blandishments apart from money. The charge in regard to money can perhaps be not substantial.
Are you really saying that their behavior was so bad that you suddenly forgot your own principles and made a terrible mistake yourself?
No, what I'm trying to say is the way they offered various things to every defector, including the ineligible defectors of BSP, showed that the entire trial of strength was vitiated by unbearable kind of manipulation.
Undoubtedly true, and the point is a fair one, but it's not the answer to the question I asked. The question I asked was of you as UF spokesman. How did your government end up in this embarrassing position of having to reverse itself in 24 hours? I mean, how did you let yourselves as a cabinet get into this position?
No, in the first place, we took that view in the light of the governor's recommendation. But when the President of India wanted us to reconsider, I would like to say we had the grace and wisdom to retrace our steps.
I grant you that, but did the governor mislead you?
He made his own recommendation,
But
and his recommendations contain certain facts. We cannot blame the governor. After having taken the decision, cabinet cannot absolve itself of its quota of responsibility.
But you said a moment that you were first led to a decision by the governor, then the president made you change your mind. So in retrospect, you think that the governor misled you?
No. The governor reported facts which, in the first flush, motivated us to pass the resolution we did.
Let me ask you about the governor. There's been an awful lot of criticism and comment about his behavior. In your eyes, as United Front spokesman, did he behave properly or did he over-exceed himself in his zeal?
No, I'm not referring to Mr. Bhandari as a personality. That's not my concern.
Just his behavior as governor?
In this context, I don't think that he exceeded his brief. He was sending his reports, and it was for the cabinet to evaluate the situation.
Apparently, he sent 9 different reports, some of which apparently suggested President's rule even before the vote in the Assembly, and some of which are supposed to have gone to the Defense Ministry as well as the Home Ministry, all of which suggests partisan behavior.
I'm not aware of the copies being endorsed to the Defense Ministry.
But you've read about it in the papers, no doubt.
No, I did. I'm not aware. But it's not correct to say that he recommended President's rule before the trial of strength. He did not.
It was only afterwards.
It was only afterwards.
So you're correcting public perception in that regard.
Yes.
How many recommendations did he send afterwards?
I think he sent a number of reports because the situation, both in Lucknow and elsewhere, was very tense.
He wasn't therefore over-excessive in the number of reports he sent?
I can't say on that. It's a matter of opinion, you see.
But not in your opinion?
No, but I'm not a free agent to express an opinion. I must reflect the opinion of the steering committee.
And clearly the steering committee didn't think he was being over-excessive.
The steering committee did not apply its mind to this problem.
Let me draw your attention to the comment made, the resolution passed by the Conference of Speakers presided over by the Lok Sabha Speaker. They severely criticized Governor Bhandari for sending independent observers to the UP Vidhan Sabha and for directing the UP Speaker on how to conduct the vote. They in fact accused him, and I want to quote this, of an onslaught on the authority, dignity and autonomy of the legislature.
I have no comment to make on that because that was his decision. I am only referring to the reports he sent to us.
Okay, let me remind you of something else which is in your manifesto, the Common Minimum Program. The United Front, and again I'll quote, committed itself to steps being taken to reintroduce popular faith in official institutions and positions. Do you think Governor Bhandari's behavior reinforced faith in the governorship?
Well, I do not think that I should express an opinion when the steering committee has not taken a view. I am a spokesperson of the steering committee. I am not a free agent.
When you say the steering committee hasn't taken a view, you're actually saying that the steering committee might eventually decide that Governor Bhandari's behavior did not reinforce faith in popular institutions.
No, I'm not saying that.
But you're leaving it open.
No, the steering committee can take a view on anything. But what I'm saying is, I cannot express a personal opinion as spokesperson of the United Front.
Okay, give me a political opinion. The president clearly didn't have faith in Governor Bhandari's recommendations. What does that do to the situation?
I'm not aware whether the president has faith or does not have faith. I have no reason to believe that the president has expressed an opinion either way in the matter.
Do you think the time has come for someone like him to be recalled?
Yeah, you see, the basic thing is, I'm not an individual. I hold an office and I speak for so many parties. Therefore, I must be slow to expressing opinion. I cannot rush in where angels fear to tread.
Okay, let me then widen the issue but not really change the subject. Let's talk about the United Front as a whole. In popular opinion today, it's not just UP where people think the government has shot itself in the foot. They look at the economy, they look at relations with Pakistan, the railways, Assam. They even talk about relationships between ministers and they say, it's all going wrong. Are you happy with the present state of affairs?
I do not think anything is going wrong in regard to any of the matters you are referring to. I am fairly clear on this.
Let me answer you by putting to you what Agriculture Minister Chaturanga Mishra said to us in an interview recently. He said, the government lacks clarity of thought and many ministers are caught within outmoded mindsets. Would you accept that?
It is his view. Basically, in any cabinet formed by a single party also, all ministers do not think alike. They need not think alike.
But should they think so differently?
I don't think we spoke in such different voices. Take for example, Mr. Narasimha Rao's cabinet. Mr. S.B. Chauhan and Mr. Rajesh Pilot used to speak in divergent voices for years on end. from within the same ministry.
Mr. Reddy, you said a moment ago the BJP saved you. Now comparison with the Congress is saving you. But surely the United Front wants to stand up on its own, not be saved by such bad company.
No, they, basically, you need to have some benchmarks.
And how lucky you are that your political opponents have given you such bad ones. Right? Let me come back to benchmarks. Your behavior over the UP crisis, isn't that a sign of a government not just lacking clarity, but a government torn apart by different views and opinions?
I would say this was a government which had afflictions of conscience, because of which we took so much time, we eventually took the right decision.
Okay, you talk about afflictions of conscience. Let me give you another example. Your finance minister is clearly and publicly committed to controlling the fiscal deficit, to opening up the economy. Yet he publicly says that his cabinet colleagues don't share his concern over the deficit and that he's under pressure to modify fundamental goals. Now that looks like lack of clarity.
No. There cannot be agreement in the Council of Ministers in respect of every detail.
But disagreement on such fundamental things?
No, there was no disagreement on fundamentals. For example, we did enable the finance minister to raise more money to control the fiscal deficit.
And tripped him up on the Insurance Regulatory Act.
That was the only issue where the United Front was divided.
You tripped yourselves up over the Women's Reservation Bill.
No,
That was the second issue where you were divided.
The last word has not been said on that. We are still discussing that.
And there's still room for a second fall.
There is always such a room in
Let me give you another example. You're committed to increasing foreign investment in the country. The economy badly needs it. Yet what does the industry minister go and do? In a moment of anger with Suzuki, he tells them they can get out of the country if they want to because the Americans, the Japanese are waiting to come in. Now, isn't that a case of petty departmental politics undermining wider, more important policy?
Well, I do not want to comment on ongoing dispute. I don't think a dispute with a particular company should be taken as a signal at all.
But will you...
This is a very wrong approach.
But will you...
we seem to proceed from the particular to the general rather than from general to the particular.
Would you at least concede that was an unfortunate remark by the industry minister?
I don't. I do not know what remark he made. Basically, Mr. Moran was functioning as a partner in a joint venture. He was protecting the interests of the government.
Let me put to you what the world outside has drawn as the conclusion of all these different points I'm raising. The world outside says this government has lost direction and it's floundering from incident to incident as it struggles to survive, and it clearly no longer has an agenda.
I think, Mr. Karan Thapar, you have not got the right picture of the outside image of a government. The government, in spite of all the difficulties, has been taking correct decisions. I don't think any previous government has taken more bold decisions on so many issues.
I want very much to talk about some of those decisions with you in part two, but let me first pursue one other point. Let me ask you about the Prime Minister's image. Do you accept that in recent weeks it's taken a knock?
No. On the contrary, in the recent weeks, his image as a decent gentleman, as a conscientious Prime Minister, has been strengthened and augmented.
Maybe decent, yes, and no doubt conscientious, but it's also been strengthened as a helpless Prime Minister and a weak Prime Minister.
How can any Prime Minister appear strong without adequate majority? It's not bold words that project a man's image. It is his work in the ultimate analysis.
You're saying the situation doesn't allow him to be strong?
The situation does not, and would not allow anybody to be strong. Any government formed from within the framework of 11th Lok Sabha cannot throw up a prime minister who can flex his muscles.
Let me bring to your attention just two little things. A recent headline in the Asian Age said, Mr. Gujral to visit India after UK. A recent cartoon in the Indian Express showed him between two customs officers looking either way saying, am I coming, am I going? And let me now repeat my question. Is that an appropriate and suitable image for the Prime Minister of India?
I don't think the image of any prime minister is determined by the cartoons or by headlines, though they are important in themselves.
So in other words, this doesn't worry you. Then let's turn quickly to the parliamentary session that you're going to face in just 2 weeks' time. Will you concede to the enormous pressure that's growing to amend the anti-defection law?
We need to have another look at the anti-defection law. It was there in our manifestos. It was there in our common minimum program. It has become all the more urgent because the Speaker of UP Assembly has reduced that anti-defection law to absolute mockery.
What about pressure to amend Article 356? There's a certain amount of that as well, both within and outside the US.
It's not a question of pressure. It's a question of commitment.
Will you take that up?
We can take that up. In fact, it's a part of a commitment made to the country in the common minimum program.
And you will take it up in this session?
I cannot say about this session, but we could take up amendment of Article 356 so as to provide more safeguards against misuse.
My last question for part one. Will you table the Jain Commission interim report in Parliament as the Congress party clearly wants you to do?
Well, we have not taken a view. I will not be able to rule out anything.
There we're going to have to take a break, Mr. Reddy, but I want to continue the discussion and talk to you about your particular ministries in part two. Don't go away. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes to continue this discussion with the Information and Broadcasting Minister. Welcome back to part two of our interview with Mr. Jaipal Reddy. Mr. Reddy, I want to now talk to you as a minister, not a spokesman of the United Front. The amendments to the Prasar Bharati Act have been passed, but when will the third member of the selection committee to choose the chairman and the board be chosen?
In the next few days. We did not nominate the third member because we always thought that the act needed to be strengthened through a series of amendments that could be done only through an ordinance.
You said in the next few days. Have you therefore already in your mind chosen who this is?
No, it's for the Prime Minister to choose. I have not yet finalized the matter with the Prime Minister.
Are you going to recommend a name to him?
No, I will go by his advice.
The press says that there's a dispute between you and the Prime Minister over either Justice Jeevan Reddy or Mr. Paipa Nandekar.
I like this free entertainment provided with the press to me.
Okay. There's one other issue that hasn't so far, as far as people know, been covered by your amendments, and that's the question of financial autonomy. At the moment, the shortfall between Doordarshan's commercial revenue and the amount of money it needs has to be made up by an annual grant from the ministry. But that means that Prasar Bharati will remain dependent upon the ministry for money, and that's room for control and power.
In fact, Doordarshan Akashvani can make a lot of money if it goes in for commercialization like private channels.
Do you want that?
In that event, it would lose its character as a national broadcasting corporation.
So it needs to be dependent upon government funds to be a public sector broadcaster?
In a way, yes. But the recent amendments have given a lot of financial autonomy too. These aspects have not been focused upon. The government in the pre-amendment phase was having say in regard to advertising time, in regard to fixation of fee. The government, through amendments, has been relieved of this power,
so
which enhances the financial autonomy of Doordarshan and Akashvani.
Let me put you something that the government in England does with regard to the BBC. There, they publicly announce a charter with 6 years of committed funding so that not only do you have financial autonomy, but BBC can actually plan for 6 years. Can you not suggest something similar here?
No, I have an open mind on that. But let me hasten to add that we have a planning commission. So a planning commission indicates for 5 years as to the amount the government will make available to Prasara Bharati for its plan expenditure.
So much the same thing will happen here, but through the guise of the planning commission.
Planning commission.
Okay, then let me put something to you.
May I also tell you, if Doordarshan does not go in for further expansion, as it must, it can take care of itself.
Quite right, but as you said, it must go in for further expansion.
Therefore, Parliament will surely keep providing generous assistance to Doordarshan and Akashvani.
And you will try and ensure that this general assistance comes with an assurance of at least 3-4 years continuity at a time so that things can be planned for.
Yes, because it's the planning commission's job. Take the 9th plan.
I accept. Let me then put to you one major concern. Are you confident that your ordinance will be ratified in Parliament?
I am absolutely confident because I know my colleagues in Parliament, they have talked to me. Today, I had a consultative committee meeting of my ministry.
And they assured you they would pass it?
Almost all of them welcomed it. And what is more, before I amended through ordinance, I had talk with the Congress President.
But you know, Mr. Reddy, Mr.
Chidambaram, his full support.
You know, Mr. Reddy, Mr. Chidambaram did the same thing with the Insurance Regulatory Act and it failed to pass. Suppose this ordinance doesn't pass, what then happens to Prasar Bharati?
Prasar Bharati will be in place with or without amendment. But let me tell you, I have absolutely no doubt at all about its smooth, unanimous passage.
Then let me turn quickly and briefly to the broadcast bill. Do you think that will be passed in this coming session?
That will depend on when the Joint Select Committee will submit the report.
When do you expect them to submit it?
I requested them to submit it on the first day of the winter session.
Clearly they're not going to do that.
Now they are not going to do that, but they could still submit the report by the end of this month, in which case I'll be able to get that bill also passed in the winter session.
So provided they submit the report by the end of November, you are virtually guaranteeing that the broadcast bill will be passed before Parliament adjourns in December.
Yes. And I'm also offering to get Broadcasting Authority constituted by the end of the current calendar year.
Before 1998 starts?
Yes.
And you're going to stick to those commitments?
Yes. I've been repeating this commitment. Of course, that will largely depend on when the report is submitted.
Let me, like I did earlier, put the opposite to you. Suppose the broadcast bill doesn't get passed. Will you, in those circumstances, say, revoke your ban on DTH?
No, I can't say any such thing. I am for any kind of new technology. I am for entry of DTH. But I don't want a minister distributing licenses.
Quite right. But you are
I want DTH to come through a proper channel.
Quite right. But you are keeping an open mind. You are saying that if the bill, for whatever reason, in the end, doesn't get passed this year, you may then at least consider revoking the ban.
I won't be able to make any kind of commitment on this count.
The most important thing is you're not saying no.
No, why should I say no or yes?
Let's leave it there. Anything more is likely to spoil it. Mr. Reddy, we all wish you the best of luck with Prasar Bharati. We wish you the best of luck with the broadcast bill. Thank you very much for talking so openly to In Focus.
Thank you very much.
That's it for this week. We'll be back next week with another interviewee. But for today, from the residence of the Information and Broadcasting Minister in New Delhi, goodbye.